All right, so this is going to be my final presentation and submission for Loadout. And as you can see, I don't have an application already open, and I'm not looking at my code base. I'm currently at my public repo for Loadout on GitHub. And that's because I'm going to be installing the release I have available here so I can showcase what is actually available for the user right now, and it could be for any user. So we're just going to come over here to our latest release. This is just a little description of, hey, here's what's different about this one. Here's what Loadout does, all this other stuff. And you can choose your own installer for Mac. Since I did use Electron, this should work for both Linux and Windows, but I haven't had the ability to test it on those, and I didn't want to put something up that I wasn't sure would actually work. And there we go, a bit of a slow internet connection on my part, so that it's taking a little bit longer. It's not a super long installation. As you can see, it's less than 200 megabytes because it's not a super hefty file. So as you can see, we're just going to put it into our applications folder, and there we go. And now we have Loadout there. So we can just open up Loadout, and then this is exactly what the user would first see. Now what we can do is we can look at, hey, look at all these different models we are able to use because I already have some configured. But what you can do is you can come over to settings down here, and here this is where you actually configure all of your different AI models. You can put in your own API key for OpenAI and Anthropic, which on Mac, it's depending on the operating software, will be stored in a different place, but it uses like for macOS, it will use keychain, which is macOS's way to store data safely and encrypt it in a very secure way. So I'm basically just passing it off to, hey, I'll let macOS do what macOS knows best. I'll let Windows do what Windows knows best, all this other stuff. So that way it will be stored as securely as any other application. But then you here have Ollama, which is all going to be hosted locally. You have all of these different models, which are models I currently have. So for example, I can do Ollama list in my terminal here. And these are, as you can see, these are the exact same models that show up in this little drop-down menu. And sometimes it won't always update in real time. You can click just refresh, and it'll pull the latest. It'll directly look at what it currently has, and then it gives you instructions. Here's how you install Ollama. If you go to this link, boom, right there, it tells you how to pull Ollama models, and then you can save your stuff there. And boom, now we're back to the main application page. So you can choose, let's try DeepSeek because, nope, I think I copied that, but we're gonna refine our idea here like what you normally would. This is just the chat interface, which is like, hey, I put an idea with Ollama or with Loadout, and now it'll talk back and forth with the user saying, hey, have you thought about this? I want more clarification about that. And just keep going back and forth with the user. And since some models think and some don't through the API, I implemented a thinking process very similar to what Cursor has, where you can expand or not expand it. But yeah, so obviously, since this is an Ollama model and also DeepSeek, which is, I chose a lower parameter one because my machine doesn't have a lot of RAM to use. So because of that, it's not going to be as fast or as good as remote as like running from ChatGPT or Anthropic. But what we can do then is we can I wanted to showcase that functionality. We can go to GPT-4 and click generate. And this will be much faster, which is why I just wanted to switch it. But basically, it goes through the same lane graph node system, which I can showcase by clicking the workflow button here. When I say same, it is actually a little bit different because because now we have different models and methods for the user to choose how they want to progress. So now you can choose Ollama, Anthropic, or OpenAI. You have total control over it. It'll initialize the LLM. If it's Ollama, then it will try to warm up the models so that way it takes less time than it otherwise would. Because while Ollama is, if you want to locally host LLMs, Ollama is amazing for it. But the problem is cold starting it, and also they're very resource intensive as opposed to just calling an API. But the option is there for if you want offline access or if you just want to host it locally for privacy reasons. So it's all there, but aside from that, it's still basically the same lane graph setup, all the same validation checks and everything. Like as you can see, we can go here to the second the user sends a request through one of these models, we initialize LLM, and then we process idea, which it takes in all of the stuff, all the messy input of the user. And then what it'll do is it'll generate a title and a description for that title and project, and it will turn that into a JSON format, a very predictable JSON format that will work. And then we pass that off into the generate PRD, where we just, every single step is something very similar. It will take in, it's designed to take in a certain input, validate it, check it, format it in a predictable way that's going to be specifically suited for the next step in the process. Like this process idea, turning the messy user input into nice, clean, predictable JSON to generate the PRD. And then that PRD will then be turned into a UI plan, a brain lift if applicable, and a checklist for the actual implementation later on. Then it will determine the strategy, whether it's going to be V0 or GPT. So based on the complexity and user preference. For the purpose of this demo, it's just going to be GPT because it'll be a little bit faster. And then it's just a normal validation check where it's like, hey, we don't want these types of files. We want these types. Hey, I noticed these files are missing. Oh, hey, this is a syntax error. Regenerate it. And all this stuff to the best of its ability prevents issues when generating the UI. But obviously some things will still get through, which is why we don't endlessly keep going in. At a certain point, we're like, okay, you can just go. You can, even if it has this error, the syntax error or whatever, you can go. And then it'll tell to the user, hey, we noticed this error, and then you can regenerate it if you would like. So this is still going on, as you can see. So now we got UI generation. It tells you these are all the things that it's going to be trying to make. So while that's still going on, it does actually, this just gets cut off because this was some testing stuff. But here, it does make this PRD. That was an older one. We'll be able to see a fresher one soon, but this is a much fresher one. Here's your project description, your target audience. These are the features you're looking for. Then here you have your checklist. It divides based off the PRD. It's like, hey, these are the phases that you're looking for. And then based off of in those phases, it will create different features for you. And then with each of those features, it'll have sub features as well. As you can see, it is very, very detailed. And then it will check off certain things that it has already implemented through its UI implementation. As we can see, this is still going on. It takes a bit because, and I tried my best to make it so it will just tell the user exactly how far along it is, but part of the problem with the Langflow implementation is the way I have it set up to hopefully improve the consistency is whenever I get a UI file, it will look through it and say, hey, I noticed that it's trying to make a dashboard button that routes to /dashboard, but it didn't make a dashboard page. And it's like, well, we need to go make that dashboard page now. As you can see, that's why it's adding, for example, dashboard features, settings, because it recognized that those were endpoints referenced in other files that were not actually generated the first round. So that's why it's currently taking a bit longer, but we can look at some previous, here we go. Like these are some other, as you can see, like, for example, this component header is not available because during this implementation, it wasn't able to make the header file for some reason, wasn't able to figure out why, and as a result of that, it wasn't able to fix it, but it recognized it wasn't able to, and it says, hey, to the user, we couldn't get this header for you. So you would be able to open up a chat, like right here. You can choose your model as per normal, and you're like, hey, you can tell it, hey, I want to, I'll do it in a sec when this finishes generating. We can be like, hey, I want you to implement the missing files, and then it will go ahead and try and do that. But it gives you a decent mock-up of like, here's what you can expect, and you would be able to export all of this. You can look at your code for it as well. It aligns it. It basically has like a mini code text editor in here, but the user isn't able to edit it, mainly just because it was just simpler and easier to make it so the user would be able just to copy this out. It just causes less issues. Besides, if you have any particular things you want to fix with it, you are able to request specific edits in the chat mode. This should be done in a second. I think this should be the last one, unless it decides to add another one at the last second. But yeah, like for example, you are able to still view like all your previous chats. You are able to continue a chat if you want to, and then you would be able to regenerate. Boom, there we go. Nice little ding functionality, because as you could see, this takes a while. So if you wanted to tab out and go work on something else in the meantime, it will ding and be like, oh, hey, we're done. So as you can see here is, so this was the one that it just made. As you can see, this was exactly what we just saw. This is a PRD it made, very similar to that last one, and our checklist as well. And the UI it made, it is similar, but this was mainly, I tried to lock down a little bit of what it was doing. I was like, hey, I wanted you to make it look professional and modern. These were things that I kind of I put into the UI prompt, but as you can see, it improved the consistency. Here's our header for it. We have our get started. We can have a get started button. It doesn't do a whole lot of stuff at the moment because it's just a mock-up, but you're like, hey, you can go to your chat and be like, actually, let's go to the chat with the missing component header, which was this one, right? So we can open up our chat, which just pops up a nice little window. And what I spent a while doing was improving the UI, the UX of this a lot, where if you tab out, it tabs with it. So that way it's not just always persisting or always getting lost, but it always stays in front of this other window. And also what I did was make it so if you were to click, while this one is focused, you click on, for example, a button here, not only does it transfer the focus, but it also registers that button press. And then you can do the same thing when coming here, back transferring over, it will automatically focus on whatever you clicked. But obviously with this AI chat functionality, the benefit of it isn't how cool or clean it looks. While it is a benefit, but you want it to actually be able to iterate over your UI, to be able to ask it questions, be able to talk to it, request specific edits, as opposed to trying to one-shot the entire UI, which is extremely unlikely unless you specifically tailor your request over the course of several hours. So maybe we're changing it so we aren't using the OpenAI API for our grammar checking anymore for this project. Let's just say, can you remove the reference to OpenAI's API since we won't be using it anymore? Send this request in, and let's just make it a little bit bigger. So yeah, certainly. So to do this, we're gonna change this to this and this to that. And it's just basically giving you, okay, here's what I'm going to be doing. And also at the end, I understood that was a request you're asking me. I'm gonna make that change now. And as you can see, this line graph workflow pops up again. And it'll skip over all the unnecessary parts because it doesn't need to reprocess your idea or your PRD or your checklist, because that's all been made, and you're requesting a very specific thing at this point. So we go straight to the planning UI node, and then we go straight to our UI generation, which is it's gonna go through the UI and make that specific edit request that you asked for. And the reason I made it automatically do it is I took the same approach that I have with my own cursor rules, where I don't want to have to keep asking, hey, I want you to do this thing. And then cursor says, okay, are you sure you want me to do it this way or you want me to do it that way? And I'm just like, cursor, I just want you to do it. And instead of just clicking up like yes and apply and all this other stuff several times, I'm just like, I want you to do it. So I took that approach here where I just made it would detect, hey, this appears to be a request the user is asking me. I'm gonna go take care of it right now. But since this process seems like it's gonna be taking a bit, because even though it's faster than the previous one, it's still regenerating the UI, I will cut over to as soon as it is done. All right, it has just finished. As you can see, I sent it in our chat. UI changes have been successfully generated, blah, 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 blah. But as you can see, it seems to have taken some extra liberties with that request, which has its pros and cons. It was a pro in this case because it made a lot of improvements, at least in my opinion, where it also made the text editor not on a different page, and it's just right there on the landing page. It'll showcase, it makes its own dummy data as well. It's like, oh, here's some, like, if you want to, here's some, what these errors would look like when you have them. And here are the other suggestions, like if for your spelling, for your conciseness, for your grammar, and everything works for the most part, but obviously it doesn't actually have the functionality because this is all pure front-end stuff. But now, let's say this is where I want to be. This is exactly what I wanted to look like before I started my project. Of course, in reality, it is nowhere close to my standard, but for the purpose of this demo, let's say it is. So we can go to export project, and we want to do our final demo. We can save it as a zip, and now we can see we've We can extract it, and now we have our Newsletter Pro here, where it's Brainlift, Checklist, PRD, README, and our UI components, as you can see, everything that it had generated. And to show that it in fact does actually work, let's make a new cursor window. Let's go to our downloads, Newsletter Pro, and we can go open up our project here, and we will then give it a sec while it wants to load, and everything is really big for some reason. Let's make that a bit smaller. We'll go into our UI components, and then we can do npx serve dot. And then what this does is now we can go to, hey, look at our local host, port 3000, which is where this is currently being hosted. You can see all of the logs for it and everything, and this is the exact UI that was being showcased in the preview. Because all the preview does is it has a preview server running on localhost, and then it just uses iframe to show that in a little bit in that window. So you're actually seeing in that preview exactly how it's going to look like when you actually deploy it and when you run it yourself. So as you can see, it's exactly the same as it was before. You have all of that same functionality. And I had a lot of fun actually working on this over the much shorter time frame than we had. I think this is something that with a few more tweaks to make it a little bit better, this is something that I myself will be using on all future projects, especially in Gauntlet, where we're flipping from other thing to other thing all the time. And I hope that other people find a use for it as well. But I'm looking forward to seeing any feedback anyone may have on it and any suggestions as well as to how this could be further improved, because aside from just making some tweaks to how good the AI actually will be, this is pretty much exactly what I've designed it to be for the most part. So let me know what everyone thinks, and I'm looking forward to all the future stuff.